Yeah, g'day everyone. Welcome back to the TryPod Live with Clarkey. I just want to pause for a second here and wait for a few more people to join than how we usually go about things. Just before we get into the round 5 preview, you would have noticed then when I ran the intro, it was just the TryPod Live with Clarkey. It wasn't the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. So let me start by addressing that, I suppose. So spoke with Winnie earlier today, and he basically said, look, I want to retire on a winning note after last week. Mixed matchup, hit 3 from 4 on best bets. And, you know, he pretty much said to me, just like Alex was once poached by Ladbrokes, then, you know, I've been poached also. Yeah, Jeff, I see your comment. Harry, I see yours too. He is no longer a part of the show. So I really hope you guys will stick around. But yeah, so it's going to be my best bets, guys. So let's jump into my best bets for round 5. I've got a losing record. Hold on. Hold on a second. Here he is. How are you, Winnie?
Hey, our audience. Sorry, that was basically my idea to try and stitch up our audience, but they're too sharp. I can see just as many comments. We're calling our bluff there. You know me, guys. I just love this too much. I couldn't give it away, even after a good round 4. 3-1, where if you know me well enough, you know I was whinging because the Queensland team did the right thing by us. Titans, Dolphins, Cowboys all covered the line. Tigers had a chance to, had a lead and chances to seal that game before New Zealand foiled our sweep. Not the first time in pod history New Zealand has spoiled things for us, but the mixed matchup still won narrowly. We'll take it. And, mate, it's a crossroads of sorts. We'll talk about what's going on with Toppy, and it is going to be a slightly out of the ordinary week. But I just have to say, I reckon it's going to be an awesome show. Round 5, not only are there some big guns back on the field, we have firepower of our own on the back of 3 of our hired guns all independently pick the same identical play, which won as easily as you like with unders in Dogs Sharks, and that total went off 6 points lower than what it was picked at on Tuesday. But also some of the games this weekend, I'm really looking forward to breaking them down and talking about it. It feels like an unofficial rivalry round too.
Yeah, there's definitely some cracking games on this round. I mean, anytime you've got the Rabbitohs and Roosters, you just know that's going to be a spectacle in itself. We can take this one of 2 ways, mate. Do you want to start with the best bets, or do you want to have a little word on Top Sport first? I'll hand it over to you, and you can kind of address both if you like.
Well, since we already pulled the leg of our followers, let's not deprive anyone any further. I liked the slate this round, and I do have 5 best bets to share. So I'll go pretty sharp on this. I'm going to start with South Roosters. And when you get a bit of rivalry where I think can be a back and forth clash with both sides having their share of success, I'm just going to back either team 1-12. That's $1.80 on 365. We can get more into that matchup, but I don't think that needs a great deal more explanation. I'm going to take Parramatta plus 2.5 in the first half, $1.88 on Ladbrokes and Neds against the Dragons. And you've heard me discuss a lot about the winless team at home. It does apply here. I do favour the first half line, although I would also lean to the full game of 4.5. I just don't think the Dragons are that much better than the Eels, that they'll be clearly too good, especially when Para's at home and overcoming that desperation factor, which also applies a little bit to the Dolphins. Though they are on the road, I will take the 6.5 start against your Titans in the Winnie Clarkey Cup. It's $1.87 on 365 because, once again, I don't think there is actually that much different between the two sides, even if we can all agree the Titans are in better form at home and maybe a little bit of a higher ceiling, but I don't think it's too much for the Dolphins. So I'm going to take getting more than a converted try. I'm going to take the start with the Redcliffe Kings. On Sunday, I'm going to lay the 4.5. I'm not really sure what I'm missing with Melbourne, and that is $1.90 on Better. They play Manly in the Battle of Brookvale, and I just think I've got the superior team, and I've got the side that is off a couple of disappointing performances, certainly a disappointing loss, and Tom Trbojevic is out. So I'm surprised how light that line is. Not to mention Hughes is looming in the reserves, could be back in. It's pretty simple for me. And then less simple is going against the unbeaten Bulldogs, but I will take the plus 7.5 at $1.90 on Sportsbet with the Knights, who had a nice bye to freshen up, get in a key man of Leo Thompson that they'll need in the middle of the field against the Bulldogs side that's been mighty impressive, mighty tough, but also working hard for their money in the last few weeks and may not be able to match the Knights' energy levels. I'm not saying it's an upset, but 7.5 start was enough to get me interested. Those are my 5 best bets. What comes to mind for you?
Like all 5, think I'm seeing them all pretty similar to you in terms of what I've got down here in my notes. And whilst I will reserve Clarkey's collect for a little later in the show, one of them is very, very similar to how you played a certain team. So looking forward to revealing that. And let's go over to where we usually play Tristan's video and give him a shout out, mate. Maybe a chance for you just to provide a little bit of clarity, well, what you can say to your followers at the moment.
So most people would understand now when TopSport was acquired by Betr, there's somewhat of a merge, and TopSport is essentially no more now, and you can't log into your app anymore. But that has been converted to a Betr account, and Tristan is carrying on as well as the majority of his team working with Betr. So I'm excited to see what direction they take it. For now, it's still kind of in flux, and until the dust settles, we don't have a clip from Tristan or an involvement from Tristan just yet, but we can hopefully provide more clarity. I don't want to sound like a politician, but it's a little bit sensitive with what our partnership agreements are right now. Let's just say this week our show is brought to us by Clarkey Plus. And on a serious note, I can promise people, and I think people know this to be true as we're in the 11th season of the pod, there's been plenty of opportunities along the way, and that's thanks to having an awesome engaged audience. But we only ever make decisions that we feel are best for the pod, for the followers long term. Anything that's not the best for the followers long term, you're going to lose that audience long term. So there's been opportunities that we've knocked back in the past because it wasn't the right thing to partner with the show, and it wouldn't have been something we really wanted to endorse. Anything we do in the future will be something that we want to align our brand with. But most importantly, what the show's about is breaking down footy games, trying to beat the bookies, and trying to find as many winners as we can. And I've got to redeem myself after such a poor 2024. And we've had a solid start where I'll say it once again, at 7-5, I feel like my record deserves to be a little better than that. Let's not forget there's a winning tip in there that I didn't even include in round 2. But anyway, we can build on the foundation we've got in the first month. And hey, 5 best bets, the most so far this season. Not to mention, I've got 4 clips in the chamber from our hired guns to share throughout the show as well.
Awesome. Do you have the Clarkey's collect exact numbers there? I know that I'm down and looking to redeem myself as well. I'm getting us -3.
-2.6.
-2.6. Okay, not as bad as I thought. So yeah, I'm looking to get back on track as well because I was good last year, but I think I might be suffering from second-year syndrome. The bookies have figured me out. They've done their research and they're showing me down, struggling for form. Let's jump into the round, mate, if we can. Game 1 is Thursday, 8 p.m, where the Raiders host the Sharks at GIO Stadium. Line was set at -4.5 against the Sharkies. It moved ever so slightly to 3.5. For the Sharkies, they welcome in Malwin Hiroti because Kale Ito is out. And for the Raiders, Morgan Smithies is back for them. That pushes Trey Mooney out. All righty, Winnie, we've got 2 sides here coming off losses in the previous round and 2 sides that are looking to rebound, but I also think 2 sides that have a lot of talk in the media about them at the moment for different reasons and different levels of criticism based on their recent performances. So when you break this one down, who do you prefer and why?
That's right. What Canberra and Cronulla have in common is both coming off tough losses where the opponent was impressive and just too strong for them on the night. And I like the spot here for Canberra. I think coming home, getting Smithies in there, so it's probably the strongest pack that Canberra have fielded all season. And Canberra's a team that's already shown us their best and their worst in the first 4 weeks, but I definitely expect effort level will be up, and I think this team's going to be relentless and will definitely improve on the last fortnight. But I just can't back against Cronulla because to me they're a typical good team off a bad loss. As much respect as the Dogs deserve, with the players that were available, Cronulla at home especially should have had that win last week and were well beaten. Now, in terms of the total, actually looks to me like similar to Sharks Bulldogs, where our hired experts all weighed in on unders. I would argue unders is appealing again when you got 2 pretty fierce sides that don't need to play too elaborately, can both lean on their kicking and defense. You might look at that. 47.5 feels a bit high to me. I actually have two of our hired guns weighing in. In fact, I think they're both going to be try scorer tips for this one, but I'd like to hear your perspective on it first.
Yeah, as I touched on in our recap show, I think the shine has really worn off the Raiders for me. So I am cautious that not everyone might be seeing it that way. And maybe I have been a bit too critical of them in my breakdown here. But I just want to reiterate, guys, my feeling for the Raiders this year, and I kind of got off that train after they got their awesome first 2 wins, but I think it's going to take a milestone or an occasion for Ricky Stewart to rev them up. And of course, their first win was a Las Vegas season opener. And then the next one was the first game at home as big underdogs, missing a key player in Joseph Tarpany. Those are the sort of things that I think Ricky Stewart can really pick out and motivate this side. I don't view the Raiders as a side that can consistently go toe-to-toe with the best. Whereas when I look at the Sharks, this is a side that I can. They impressed me in Las Vegas. They were poor last round, but I can forgive them going down to a really tough Bulldogs side. Don't forget, the Bulldogs scored 4 tries against the Titans in the opening 20 minutes, and the Titans have only conceded 3 tries since in the whole next however long they've played in football. And I just think that how the Bulldogs play, I don't see the Raiders able to replicate that level of effort and disruption that they had to the Sharks stack. In fact, I don't think any side can. I think only the Bulldogs can do that to sides. So for me, this is a game where I see the Sharks getting away early. I can't see them being reined back in rather by a Canberra side. I think they're better than what they've shown us last round, where I can't quite say that for the Canberra Raiders. So I think the Sharks will win comfortably here. They did beat the Raiders comfortably on both occasions last year, and the Raiders roster has probably weakened even further since then in terms of experience. So my prediction here is Sharks covering the line, especially now that it's moved to 3.5. I think that's really appealing for me in this one. Let's move to our hired guns, Winnie. What have they got for this one?
So we've got, for the first time in 2025, a man that many of you know well, especially associated with try scorer tips. And we might get some longer pops from him as well. Again, I haven't listened to any of the clips yet. So let's sit back and enjoy this one firstly from Nicole.
Hey guys, it's Nicole from Wiki. Look, I'm going to do my tip first up. So Tommy Hazelton, he scored a try one in every about 4 NRL games in the last couple of years, and you're getting $10 for him to score a try anytime on Bet365. That's up against the Raiders on Thursday night. I absolutely love that price. As always, guys, if you Google Wiki Linktree, our Discord has over 5,000 people. The odds comparison tool on our website is free for everyone. It's got first try scorer, anytime try scorer, and a few others, and you can compare the price and get the best price across multiple websites, and it's all for free. So good luck, punt responsibly, and I'll catch you guys soon.
Very interesting. I was just checking another bookie there. They actually don't have odds out for him yet. So maybe they're cautiously waiting on the fence of that one, or maybe someone got into them early and they've suspended. I'm not too sure there. And what is our other hired gun for this one, Winnie? What have they got as well?
Yeah, Nicole loves a meat pie from a middle.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Benny, who is looking to register his first win with his guest clip on the show. So let's see who he's selected.
G'day, TryPod fam. Hope everyone's doing well. As always, thanks to Jacob and Clarkey for having me on. I'm going to kick things off with a little bit of apology. The only one yet to produce a winning tip so far. Absolutely no love on the try scoring front with the fullbacks the last 2 weeks. Hamaso and Teddy both bringing up duck eggs. Congrats to the other lads on producing a winning tip last week. All 3 of you smashed the unders in the Bulldogs and Sharks game, which was a great tip. I think the Undertaker's 2-0 so far, which is just horrible. I better win this one. This weekend, we're going to ditch the fullbacks and roll with the money man Mulatalo when they take on the Raiders in Canberra on Thursday night. Got a strike rate a touch under 60% against the Raiders, scoring in 7 of his 12 head-to-heads against them for about 9 tries, which includes 3 in the last 5. 50% strike rate in Canberra as well. And what's interesting is he's never gone more than 2 games against the Raiders without scoring. He hasn't scored in the last 2, so he's due in this one. You can pick him up for $1.86 on Sportsbet currently. Best of luck if you follow that one, lads. Let's see if we can salute. Cheers.
I like that one as well. I'll be following that one. He will have Maween Hiroti inside of him instead of Kale Iro. And I reckon that's worth noting as well, Winnie, because Hiroti is more of a passing centre, whereas Kale Iro, a lot of times this year, we've seen him kind of show and go himself, and he's scored more than Mulatalo. So I like that one as well, mate. Alrighty, we'll move on to game 2. Friday, 6 p.m. Panthers host the Cowboys. We're at CommBank Stadium. Line is and is set at -13.5 against the Penrith Panthers, who welcome back a young prospect named Nathan Cleary. Brian To'o is out, so Casey McLean shifts to the wing. Scott Sorensen's out, so Matt Eisenhuth joins their bench, and no changes for the Cowboys. All right, Winnie, these sides actually went 1-1 last year, and the Cowboys did surprisingly well against the Panthers in both of their games. But for me, this looms as a really difficult task to not only back up their win last round, but back it up in Sydney, where we know they historically do struggle. So would you agree with me there, and how do you break this one down?
Yeah, it's a tough week to catch Penrith. In fact, you've got two teams that are 1-3, but there is plenty of intrigue in this one for me. You mentioned him there, monumental in. In past seasons, Penrith have still performed immaculately well without Nathan, but more than ever, when Edwards is missing this season, when you've moved on from Jerome, bringing back the two-time Clive Churchill medalist is invaluable. Unfortunately, not all good news for the Premiers with Sorensen To'o being out in this one. And you've got a Cowboys side that actually is able to select the same 17, travelling down to Sydney. But as I said, it's not an opportune time to catch Penrith. However, I lean to the Cowboys and I lean to the 13.5 start. I think the fact that the Cowboys won makes a world of difference to confidence, because at 1-3, it's all to play for ahead of you, as opposed to being 0-4. You're on the precipice. Even if you do pull things together, it starts to get late early. Now, I also think, and I've sort of made this point in the Cowboys' last couple of games, North Queensland's not really outgunned. When you look at, you easily say there's 5 to 6 Origin caliber players for North Queensland, and that's not far off what Penrith bring into this match with who's available. So I am tempted by plus 13.5. I'm also tempted by plus 6.5 first half. And the only reason I won't play it is when I look at the last two Penrith losses and I see they were down 14-0 early and then in Melbourne, and then down 28-0 to the Bunnies. Before fighting back in both of those, I could see an emphasis being put on a strong start. And I do think the Panthers, where they have the advantage, is the forward pack that's more powerful, and that gets punctuated by Cleary's immaculate kicking game. I know that Panthers 13 plus will actually be popular because no one's going to write off the 4-peat champs. And I'm not going to be surprised if they do rise here, but for me, the line is too large. Undertaker tip incoming as well after we hear your side of this one.
Perfect, mate. Yeah, my first thoughts for this one was I just looked immediately to the Penrith side and I thought they have got to be absolutely stinging after losing 3 in a row. Not only 3 in a row that they've lost, but also all the discussion from online and traditional media, etc., really questioning their dynasty and questioning their credentials moving forward. Now, the loss of Brian To'o really does hurt, but of course, there's some significant inclusions here, and they're also back at home. That's another tick for them, and I do like the inclusion of Casey McLean. I don't think over a full season he could quite replace Brian To'o, but I expect him to come in and be able to do a job and reach around that 200 metres that Brian To'o consistently does also. Then when I look across the fence to the Cowboys, the monkey's off the back. But I do feel they won against a Raiders side that had really poor fundamentals, as simple as catching a bomb. And they continually handed it over and gave the Cowboys opportunity. Now, why I'm looking at this Penrith side a little bit differently is I think they did the same thing against the Rabbitohs and the Storm early. They pressured themselves with silly errors and gave too many opportunities away. So I think that's absolutely going to be their focus at training, really correcting that side of the game. And that's how the Cowboys were able to win last round. So I think they take away the Cowboys' pathway to victory there. And that is the only pathway to victory we've seen from this Cowboys side this year. We've seen sides take it to them, and it got tough. I used the Broncos game as an example. And the Cowboys, they had a few nice moments, but the moment it got really tough and the character was tested, they folded and gave up. And if there is one side that's going to test your character for the full 80 minutes, in my opinion, it is a Nathan Cleary-led Panthers side that's coming off 3 losses in a row back at home. So my prediction here is Penrith winning by double digits. I do agree with you. Once you start getting to a 14-plus win, it is a little bit iffy, but I would say Penrith win this by double digits, and they do win quite well and really remind the league that they're still here. Also very interested to hear how the Undertaker is seeing this one as well, Winnie, so let's roll that clip.
G'day, TryPod. Matty here, 2-0. My best bet for this week's going to be Penrith team total under 31.5. That's $1.94 on Sportsbet. My bet was going to be plus 13.5 on the Cowboys. That's the bet I liked anyway, but I think we've got a little bit more wiggle room, bit more margin for error going it this way. I mean, there is a world where Penrith have a convincing win something like 30-6, 30-12. That'd cover the spread easily, but that'd still cash the team total under. I look at the Penrith lineup and no Dylan Edwards, no Brian To'o, no Scott Sorensen. This is just a lot of rugby league points to hit. And look, if the Cowboys can't keep Penrith under 32 points, give it away, guys. It's not your year. Good luck.
Alrighty, I'm not going to confirm or deny if I am building a multi as the show goes on with all of our guest tipsters, but that might be why I'm looking at my phone when we come back every time. Anything else from you, Winnie, before we move to the blockbuster?
I love the Undertaker. I love the he's unbeaten with his tips, and it's a great way of looking at it. So he's also agrees that line seems a little long, 13.5. But another way of breaking it down is what are the predicted team totals? Penrith's expected to get around 31 and the Cowboys around 18. So which one do you feel better about? If you think the Cowboys will be within 13, do you feel better about getting 18 plus out of the Cows, or do you feel better about restricting Penrith to 31 or under? We know the way Matty sees it there. So something else extra for people to consider or bake into same game or weekend long multis.
Yeah, appreciate the insight there, especially from someone who's undefeated on their tips. And if the Undertaker does lose a tip this year, can we please start the clip with him just sitting up suddenly like the WWE wrestler Undertaker with his tip? Let's make that agreement right now. That has to happen. Let's move on to game 3, mate. It's Friday, 8 p.m. The Rabbitohs host the Roosters. We're at a core stadium. Line was set at -1.5 against the Rabbitohs. That moved to -3.5 following team lists. We have Latrell Mitchell back. He is going to play left centre. Alex Johnston is out, so a shift in the back line there, and Lachlan Hubner returns from his suspension. For the Roosters, both Connor Watson and Celesi Fogarty return, but there is no Victor Radley. Alrighty, Winnie, Rugby League's oldest rivalry returns for another chapter, and I have to be honest, when that line was set at 1.5, it seemed like a trap to me. Like, it just seemed too obvious to pick Souths. Now that it's moved to 3.5, do you think that's adjusted because of the team lists, or do you think people hammered the 1.5 line?
I wonder if people were waiting to see Latrell picked at centre and if that is actually gaining market confidence, because it does seem to be the smartest move and the best rein Bennett can pull. You've got the man leading the Dally M's in Jai Gray doing such a great job at 1, and we know how much upside there is for Latrell, at centres for Souths. I was talking about the Bunnies' left side attack being potent before Trelmet played a game this year. Now you add him into the mix. That's a crucial challenge. Think about who's defending on the right side for the Roosters and who's going to have to contend with that. Sandon Smith, Robert Toya, Dom Young, right? Like, that's going to go a long way to deciding this matchup, whether those players can contain what is thrown at them by Rabbitohs' left side attack. So maybe something to look at with same game, as you probably want players, I would suggest, on that flank. The key for the Roosters is they're going to have to dominate territory, and I would say the speed of the ruck as well. While the Chooks will miss Radley, you welcome back Watson into the middle of the field. This rivalry itself is always enticing, but I find it especially important at this juncture of the season where you got two teams that were kind of written off coming into the year, but I think that means both really have a point to prove, and the Rabbits have started a lot better than the Roosters, but they're both going to be bang up for this. And I do think Souths have to be favourite, because if Souths get equal opportunity, they'll be more deadly. But I still look at the Roosters with dynamic players like, of course, Tedesco, but I'm getting increasingly impressed by what Nwanga Nituaze is doing, and he's getting better and better each week, can break a game open. And you look at your props like Collins, Lenu, and Nafahu White has been seriously strong. Like, he's stepped up, and I don't think it can excuse letting Terrell May walk out the door, but at least maybe you can say the Roosters knew what they had in White. So I think the bookies had the line about right, and I was going to pass it. But a little bit like I mentioned with the Dolphins last week, when you get bitter rivals, you can say, yes, the team that's up wants to bury them, but you also get the losing side less likely than any other game to give up. So I feel good about a back and forth contest, finishing 1-12 either way. I'm surprised I could nab that at $1.8365. So when I found it, I was happy to secure that as a best bet.
When I broke this one down, I went straight to the Roosters attack, which has just really, really struggled their past 2 games against the Warriors and the Titans. And not only is their completion rate being super poor in both, but they haven't put themselves in consistent enough field position to utilise the strike weapons that they still do have. And so I'm just not sure how consistently they'll be on the Rabbitohs line, pressuring them and fatiguing them. I love the inclusion of Latrell Mitchell at centre. I think it makes perfect sense. Less mileage in return from a soft tissue injury. He's played rep footy there before. And as you said, he'll be marked up on no matter which side they want to go with their centres. Both their centres are rookies in the Sydney Roosters. So I also went to last year where the Roosters won both of these meetings. One of them was by a significant margin. So you'd have to think the Bunnies are probably itching a little bit more in this one to get the win. And I did touch on the Roosters' offense and how it's been really poor, but they're also averaging an average of 31 points per game conceded. And that does seem a little bit too high to be sustainable across a season, of course. But even if you want to say they concede 20 here, and that's well below the average, well, the Bunnies are averaging that in attack. So against the side conceding more on average, you'd have to think the Bunnies score a little bit more than that. We saw what they were capable of last round, 28 points in the Panthers in 40 minutes. And because their second half was so poor, I actually don't see them getting too far ahead of themselves. We've seen sides in the past get a really great win over the Storm or Panthers and then absolutely fail to back it up the next week. I think Wayne Bennett would have reined them in pretty quickly and said, look, great 40 minutes, wasn't an 80-minute performance, and not taken too much confidence from that because there was still a lot of work to go and be done despite knocking off the Panthers. So I don't see them overlooking the Roosters for that fact. Then you add in it's their arch rival. And my prediction was Rabbitohs at the line. I was comfortable with the time they can win by 2 or more. Now that it's moved to 3.5, I'm still comfortable. I could see them winning by 4 or more points. So that will be my prediction for this one. Rabbitohs at the line. Alrighty, game 4 winning Saturday, 3 p.m. The Eels host the Dragons at CommBank Stadium. The line is set at -4.5 against the Dragons. No changes since team lists. Emre Guler is out for the Dragons, so Blake Laurie comes in. And for the Eels, they've got Dylan Walker making his club debut, Luca Moretti included on the bench, and Joey Lussick is out. They're starting Riley Smith as their hooker. All right, the Dragons picked up their first victory last round, whilst the Eels, they remain winless. They're at home here, and they will be desperate. And you have seen enough to tip them here, at least in the first half. You think they can hang and keep it tight.
And in addition to mentioning this the last couple of weeks, again on the recap, I did a little clip on Sunday, and the Dragons were one of the teams I referenced. 6 sides have been winless and played at home in the last 2 rounds. Those sides have covered 5 out of the 6 games. We've been on for best bets, 5 out of the 6. Parramatta applies here. And depending on results, like if Para wins, and we'll get to the Finns as well, this could be the last time it applies this season. So out of principle, it's very hard to find enough reasons to want to play St. George. I know that the Dragons will be an obvious side after such an impressive win over the Melbourne Storm, where desperation went a long way and the defence was excellent. And I look at Para, you can definitely say I should have grabbed that mega start, 18.5 points last week, and I leaned with that, that number being too high. But I wholeheartedly believe if we took Para plus 18.5, we don't get that meaningless miracle try at the end of the game. So it's one of those things. It only happens because we weren't on. So this bet, again, I'm going Para plus 2.5 first half. It's not a slam dunk. You need a bit of faith to follow me into Para here, because this was the game that sunk the Dragons last season. St. George had to win. And if you recall, St. George was blown away by nearly 30 or by a 30-point lead before. I want to say the Dragons scored 5 tries in about the final 15 minutes. Clarkey, you might have the exact numbers, but it finished about 44-40. I know the Dragons want revenge. You add to that this fella, Clint Gutherson, who's somewhat discarded by Parramatta. He returns. You do have Lomax switching teams, but it's the opposite case where Zach pretty much abandoned the Dragons. I think he made a comment saying he wanted to play for a contender as one of his reasons for leaving. So you could say that teammates will want to stick it to him as well. But I've got enough in Para in that a team that's still searching for a win under Riles. I know that this side's been toothless in attack. And again, the Dragons were so good defensively last week. So Para's going to have to come up with a bit of a plan to score some points. But what it comes down to for me, I really don't think the ability in the 1-17 in St. George exceeds Parramatta. The Dragons' halves remain unconvincing to me. I think the packs are well matched in this one. I will take the home team. Like, I understand you can make St. George a favourite because on form they are playing better and Para are so unpopular. But this game can go either way for me. I will take +2.5 because I generally just believe that's a superior bet to +4.5 for the full game if they're both the same price. If the line ticks down even half a point, you won't be able to get that first half line anymore. But there's no way this line's going to get up to 8.5, which is what it would need to be for the first half line to actually move significantly and be a better number than what it's jumping at right now. So if you agree with me, I would say all aboard and hold your nose.
Yeah, I think there's reasons you can tip both sides here in this one, but I am going to lean the way of the Eels. I think last round I definitely saw a shift in the effort. That certainly increased against the Sea Eagles, but their attack was so disjointed and clunky, and they are only averaging 11 points per game this year. But you know that's not sustainable. Like, no side is going to average less than 2 converted tries over a season, you wouldn't think. I do like some of the changes this round as well. I thought through the middle was where they were most effective against Manly through JP and Joe Offahen-Gowie. I do like that Riley Smith is starting at hooker for them. I think that's a really great change. Joey Lussick has been really underwhelming there. And then the inclusion of Dylan Walker, who can facilitate others and also go hard himself in the middle and make some valuable meters there. I do question the Dragons here and wonder if they might be overlooking the Eels slightly, coming off a huge victory over the Storm. And I know people will question that because there are other factors, but let's not pretend that this Dragons side was anything but inconsistent under Shane Flanagan last year. They would win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game. And that trend almost, repeated itself throughout their season. It was more common last year for the Dragons to blow easy games against sides they should win and win against sides they shouldn't. I'll reference they beat the Storm in Melbourne and then lost to the Eels, as you said, and all they had to do was beat them to play finals. So maybe I've got a little bit too much of a gut feel about this game, but I think the Eels will cause an upset here and get their first win of the season. Their strength last round was their middle forwards, as I touched on, and the Dragons thin even further there with Emre Guler suspended. So my prediction here is Eels at the line, just to give me that 4-point coverage. That will be my pick for this game. Game 5, Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Titans host the Dolphins at Cbus Super Stadium on the Gold Coast. Line was set at -5.5 against the Titans. It moves slightly to -4.5. Some changes for them. No Sam Verrills, so Chris Randall moves to hooker, and Jimmy Joloff returns on their interchange. For the Dolphins, Thomas Gilbert is suspended, and Kaneli Lemuelu comes in at back row there. Max Plath, he switches to lock Winnie. We got the Winnie Clarkey Cup, mate. Now, you have won this 3 times. I've only won it once. Who have you got in the 5th edition of the Clarkey Winnie Cup, and why?
That's true, although you do hold it. Also, this game may be known as the Better Bowl, since Better took over the Toppy sponsorship of the Titans. And I think just about every time we've hooked up, there have been some exciting finishes. And also the games between these teams. And it's only been a short rivalry, but I'll never forget, and I'll never let you forget, that fateful afternoon in 2023 at Suncorp in our inaugural year, or even last year, the Titans were the ones that got the better of a double-digit comeback and, of course, carry in far better form into this week. Your Titans have been ultra impressive. I've been on them the last 2 weeks for best bets. I screwed up a little bit, I think, talking about the tries conceded, because I forgot about the second half against the Dogs. You did concede a couple of tries there, but we could put it this way. The first 20 minutes of your season, you gave up 4 tries, but in the last 2 weeks combined, you've given up 3 tries. For sure, there's defensive improvement and resolve shown, but if I could push back a little bit, I suppose I would say the Titans were best bets for a reason the last 2 weeks. Also, Newcastle were missing key pieces. The Roosters are not the contenders we're accustomed to. And on top of that, if you watch Titans Roosters, you saw not only a length of the field intercept really swing the course of that game, but the Chooks could not hold the ball. So you're going to have to beat a team that completes at a higher rate generally to win. So that is why I'm leaning into the might of the red and white. And once again, you, the listener or the viewer, have to be confident this is coming from my head, not just my heart. This season, I think I've backed the Finns twice and I'm 1-1. Gilbert is a big out, but the Psychoplath can hold it down at lock. Lemuelu is a welcome addition. Your boys are going the better. I could argue probably a high quality 1-17, but not much between these teams for me. And what seals it actually is that I think the Dolphins' speed and mobility will be well suited to that lightning track at Seabus. Tabuai Fido, his legs will be pumping, his heart will be pumping, maybe more than that, considering it's on the GC. But I think it's hammer time. And I think you'll miss Kinney returning serve. You may win, but 6.5 is a solid start. I'll take it.
I don't think I've heard a worse breakdown from you on this show, mate, since I started. And you accused, or you didn't accuse, sorry, you said you have to, people have to trust you that you were tipping with your head and not your heart here. And look, for me, I'm doing the same. This is coming from my head as well. Maybe the heart's got a little bit in this as well. This is a real testing game for the Titans for me, in the sense that if we are a consistent side this year, and no offense by this, Winnie, but if we are a consistent side that believes we're finals bound, we need to be beating the Dolphins based on what we've seen from both sides in the last 2 rounds. I think when I look at this Dolphins side, the biggest case you can make is that they'll be desperate, having not won yet. But I use that reasoning against the Tigers, and you could have used it last week as well. And it hasn't resulted in a win for them there. They did cover the line in one of those games, though. You look at it from an analytics lens. The Titans concede less points, and they score more points so far this season. You run it through the pub test, and you have to take the Titans as well. Our only loss this year is to an undefeated side in the Bulldogs, and that was our opening game of the season. If the Titans can keep this consistency around their try-line defense, we've seen recently they do have points in them early and late in games. So for me, I hope I'm not overlooking something here, but it seems a pretty easy tip to me. I think Titans win. I think we can cover a converted try easily, and I might regret this come recap time, and I'll own up if I do. But if we're a serious final side this year, and I'm not 100% convinced we are, but if the Titans are a serious final side, they should be winning this 13+, based on what we've seen from both sides this year. So my prediction's Titans at the line. Anything else, I will definitely take all the same.
So
James.
I might be biased. I like the Dolphins. You might be biased. You like the Titans. We need someone to split the difference. Let's see what the Padonis has to say.
Hey guys, Padonis here. Happy Tuesday. Hope you all took that under in the Dogs-Sharks game last week with an easy salute. We've got an undefeated record in the bet of the week, looking to make it 3 from 3. And for round 5, my favourite bet is the Dolphins, a plus 6.5 at $1.87 on Bet365. We've seen so far 2 teams in opposite form lines. The Dolphins sitting at a winless 0-4 record. Don't think that'll last this week. I think they do get the win. Happy to take the points at plus 6.5. We've seen that Keanu and Kinney still out from the team list, and Verrills and Jolliffe, 2 additional outs for the Titans. Whereas for the Dolphins, we know Gilbert's suspended, but Max Plath is a genuine 13, as he proved last year. I don't think they lose too much with him returning to the middle of the field. And the big return, Lemuelu, is their starting edge back row in tandem with Funiaku. I think both of those guys on the edges are going to unlock their attack a little bit, as we've seen them become a little bit stagnant, a little bit too sideways. I think the conditions are going to suit perfectly for how they want to play with the smaller mobile forward pack. And the man that's under pressure all year so far has been the Hammer, looking for him to break out and have a big game to kickstart his season. I think they can do just that. And when I do look at the Dolphins, their next 2 games, it's a torturous row with Penrith and Melbourne coming up. So I think they can genuinely be staring at an 0-7 record if they do not get the win here. I think they're going to be dialed in, ready to go, laser focused. Come on, Finns, let's get the win. I think they do win outright. And the old saying holds true, of what goes up must come down. And that's going to be the Gold Coast Titans in a flat spot. So let's take the Finns. Good luck, gamble responsibly.
Padonis has spoken.
Horrible, just horrible. Look, I'll add it to my multi that I'm building as we go, but I'm not happy about that leg. But he did make a lot of great points, if I'm absolutely honest. And oh my God, I did not realise I've got Penrith and Storm next week. This is the Dolphins grand final now, if they want to win in the first 7 weeks potentially, mate.
I'll just say, it was honestly quite improbable that 3 of our tipsters again would all land on one specific play and one specific unders. When it comes to Padonis and I having the identical play, I guess the fact that I have picked 5 plays this week, it's not, as unlikely. We both actually were on the Titans 2 weeks ago when you were winless, and we had very similar style bets in the comfortable win over Newcastle. But we're not married to one team. I mean, in this case, it is tricky because I'm dealing with my own side here. But I believe, they're going to give you a good run for your money, mate. It's another game I can't wait to watch. And generally, when you think a game's going to be a beauty, you feel better taking the plus than the minus.
Absolutely. No doubt you'll be at this game and getting your private jet to Suncorp shortly after this game, because Saturday, 7:35 p.m, Broncos host the Tigers at Suncorp, just up the road. Line is set at minus 17.5 against the Broncos, who have no Jordan Ricky, so Jaden Hunt comes in for him. For the Tigers, no Jerome Luai. Latu Fainu moves to halfback. Adam Dewey is named. Solomon Fatape is out for Luke La'ali'i. Struggle to say that surname. No surprises to see him dropped. All right, Winnie, we have the largest line of the round here. Which side do you lean to and why? For me, I think that's a bit too large for the Tigers. Even though they're missing troops, they've shown some pretty good improvements this year. Do you see it similarly?
I agree with you. It's a massive line. Of course, Luai's out, and that means some may expect a bit of a regression back to 2024 form, but Fainu's handy. Galvin continues to improve. I think he can lead a team when you've got the craft of Appy and the basketball star Buller backing them up as well. But Brisbane's in a good spot here, getting the benefit of back-to-back home games, the longer turnaround. Could have probably won by more last week in better conditions as well. And as I said a week ago, Brisbane is one of these sides that so many SGM punters love to lean into. They're going to pick Brisbane by a margin. They're going to pick various try scorers, especially in a lopsided line scenario. So I definitely think the bookies adjust the handicap up and adjusted some of those try scorer ATS prices down to safeguard against some of the big payouts that are possible. Therefore, the only side I could play in this game would be West, but it's a tricky one when I really don't feel that they're going to win. It's similar to Para last week. I didn't think Para would win in Manly, but I did think the longest line of the round was a bit too much and I should have grabbed the points. And you know what I said? If I can find 18.5, because I did find some 17.5s juice to the minus. If I can find 18.5, I'm on tonight, but I couldn't. And the thing is, I do know Brisbane are very capable of running up the score. I don't know if you're going to mention this as well. Is there a possible Madge revenge on West's angle too? It's a reluctant pass for me.
Yeah, I can only lean the way of the Tigers here with that size line, but I do agree with you. I'm not tipping them to win. I don't think an upset is realistically a chance here. It's more so I just can't see them being blown absolutely off the park, even down on troops, to be honest, because they have hung tough in a lot of games this year in moments so far. And we look to Brisbane as this offensive juggernaut so far this year, and I think that's due to their team on paper. And to be fair, they are averaging 29 points this year, which is really good in attack. But the Tigers are only conceding 15. So we have to give some credit to the Tigers there as well. I think if the Tigers can defend tough and cross for one or two of tries of their own, especially with their goal kicker and Adam Dewey back, like if they can get 10 points themselves, I can't really see the Broncos getting up around the 30s over the Tigers, even at home. I also think the injured star theory might apply here with Jerome Luai, where we see others step up and he'll still be there, still traveling with the team, giving them that off-field confidence to step up. And whilst he has been great this year, he hasn't been everything to the Tigers' attack. He's been an integral part of it, but I haven't looked at Jerome Luai so far this year as a Nathan Cleary or a Tom Trbojevic, where the whole attack kind of revolves around him. He's a key cog to their attack, and a very key cog. I don't want to undersell him there. Maybe I'm being a bit too critical of the Broncos here as well. You guys let me know if you think I are, but there's just something not quite clicking with them yet. Like, they came out in round one and blew the Roosters off the field, and we thought, wow, this side is going to be a gun side this year. And then they lose to the Raiders, and unexpectedly with a huge line they had to cover there. And then they're coming off rival wins against the Cowboys and Dolphins, where I have to feel their hunger and their motivation drops slightly here, where the Tigers could rise, especially given they felt they were unlucky with referee decisions last round. So for me, I will play Tigers at the line here. The way I'm going to actually play it, Winnie, is I'm going to beef that line up and include it in a multi. I'm going to add the Tigers at plus 20.5, which is around the $1.60 mark, to one of my multis. I think I couldn't see him losing by 20, if I'm honest.
And comment there, Ryan. He's mentioned a couple of weeks in a row the Ewing theory. So that's a reference for those who listen to the Bill Simmons podcast, if you like your American sport. It's similar to injured player theory, but basically you take like the biggest name out of a team and people write that team off. but there is some sort of force sometimes that team actually proves that they're more than a one-man band and steps up and can actually go on a run. So could apply here, as you referenced as well, without that catchphrase. So we agree. We're sort of like, we think it's too many points, but we're both also not brave enough to back against Brisbane, who can be bullies in their own right sometimes.
They can. That's why, I wasn't quite brave to get around the best bet price that we look for $1.80 plus. So I'll settle with slightly less than a multi for how I'll play that game. Game 7, 4 p.m. on the Sunday. Sea Eagles host the Storm at 4 Points Park. Line set at -4.5 against the Storm. Only change for them is Lazarus Lepu returning on the bench. Marion Seve is out for the Sea Eagles. No Tom Trbojevic. That moves Lehigh Hopewadi to fullback and Clayton Fualalo to the wing. Josh Aloye is also out for them, so Sipley comes in. Battle of Brookies here, Winnie. We love when these two sides meet. The storyline writes itself most times, and you think this one will be a revenge game for the Melbourne Storm.
Is this officially, or is this unofficially rivalry round? I don't know if about Sharks and Raiders, it feels like a bit of a rivalry. Is there a connection of Stewart has coached both teams? Of course, South's Roosters. Well, Gutho returns to Para, makes it an instant rivalry. We got Winnie Clarkey Cup, and then Battle of Brookvale, as you said here. But what am I missing with my best bet? I've gone Melbourne -4.5, $1.90, which is the line everywhere. Trbojevic is out for Manly. Okay. The Storm rarely underwhelm in multiple games. And whether you can say they got it done against Penrith, and Penrith's a good side, I think that Melbourne side expected to do more with who was available for Penrith, with Cleary knocked out 5 minutes in and with a 14-point lead. And then, of course, Melbourne's held scoreless second half and actually upset by St. George. I still see a clear class advantage with the purple team. Puppy, Money, Grant, right, is more than what threat Manly is going to pose. I've got the better pack as well, more punch off the bench. Hughes' chance to return is a bonus to me. I think this line should be 6 or higher without Jerome Hughes. And if Hughes is in, it's got to be closer to 7 or 8 for mine. The Brookie factor is real, I suppose, if you look at Manly, who are 3-1 this year and have played their best at Brookvale. But Melbourne's not intimidated by that. Sometimes with a gun team, I want plenty of reasons for them to bring in full focus, which the Storm certainly will have in this one. And I do have the self-awareness to know I come across as a bit of a Manly downer and doubter, but my thoughts are pretty clear and consistent on this, that I don't think the Sea Eagles stack up with the stronger sides in the competition, and this is a good opportunity to test that theory, and I'll back it with a best bet.
When I break this one down, I go straight to the Melbourne Storm. I think they've been really poor in the past fortnight by their standard. Now, I know they're 1-1 officially in that period, but they weren't their best against that Penrith side. They really let them back into the game. And I thought that after that Penrith game, they would have really woken up and clicked back into gear, but maybe it took a loss to really awaken this side. Their mentality should be completely different this time around. And realistically, they're meeting the Sea Eagles at a perfect time with Tom Trbojevic unavailable. The Sea Eagles did defeat them at this ground last year in this corresponding match. That was the only time they met. So, of course, they need to be on alert, and that's another factor there for them. I do look at this as a minor point, but it is a point in the Storm's favour, and that is the distractions around Manly and the DCE situation. Both sides continuing to play it out in the media. So that's another small tick there for the Melbourne Storm. When you look at it from the analytics lens, both of these sides are actually averaging 31 points this year and conceding 18 also. So if we go via that, it is expected to be a close game on paper. But I just feel the Melbourne Storm, if they get their mentality right, they will beat every side this year and win the premiership. So whilst Manly have been red hot at home, I don't think the win will come easy. Storm will have to earn it. I never underestimate the Storm, or at least I try not to. So my prediction here will be Melbourne Storm winning and covering that line, even if it takes the full 80 minutes to do so. Final game of the round, mates. Sunday, 6:15 p.m. Bulldogs host the Knights. We're at a core stadium. Line set at -6.5 against the Bulldogs, who will be without Satili Tupanua. Curtis Morin comes in for them. And for the Knights, they welcome back their big unit, Leo Thompson. Final game of the round, mate. Knights are coming off a bye. They're freshened up against an undefeated Bulldogs side. And you think they can make it a close battle, if nothing else?
I do, and that's despite the fact these teams have exchanged a few floggings in the last couple of years. But I do think that bye came at a good time for Newcastle. I know I'm going up against the only undefeated team, But there's still no Birdo or kick out. Now, having said that, of course, others have elevated, and the Bulldogs have been mighty impressive. Tupanua will be missed, and you mentioned the future Bulldog Thompson is still going to be playing in red and blue at this one. And I just had to play the Knights because, Newcastle did get comprehensively beaten at the Gold Coast, but there were plenty of excuses in that. The Gold Coast were red hot that night. The Knights had several players missing. And the fact that what got me over the line here, I reckon even a 6.5 line may have been a lean. And then I saw I could get a 7.5, and I just thought it's too much this point in the year against a non-full strength Dogs. I don't mean to doubt the Dogs after several gritty encounters, but I think that actually Canterbury could be a team looking forward to a bye a little bit, and then that big Easter Friday clash with the Bunnies coming up, while the Knights coming in off a break, and I like a team that's had a break as well as a bad result to dwell on. So I'd still say the Dogs will outlast Newcastle here, but in a grinding style game, give me those 7.5 points as my 5th best bet this week.
When I saw the lines come out this week, that was actually the line I first went to. I thought, yep, Knights, so I can get plus 6.5. I'll take that. Even though I'm so high on the Bulldogs right now and I've praised them more than any team in this competition, I do wonder, has the 4 games taken a toll on them? And then I thought, well, they do have the bye next round. And this is where a little bit of uncertainty built for me, Winnie. I thought, do they rally one more game with maximum effort knowing the bye is around the corner? Or do they start to look ahead a little bit and think, yeah, we've got a big Good Friday game against the Bunnies, and we're getting Matt Burton back and Viliami Kikau in that game, and maybe Jacob Carraz as well. And does that affect their mindset? So because I was unsure on what sort of mindset they'd come in with, I couldn't quite get to them, the Knights there. I do think there's a small chance the Knights win here, and I do think they'll improve from the bye. And I think where they struggled was their attack. And they do have attacking weapons in Fletcher Sharp and Kalen Ponga. So if we look at it purely off stats, yes, they did struggle to score against the Titans. And yes, we know the Bulldogs are the far superior defensive side. But I still think the Knights can score a couple on them here. Bulldogs are averaging 26 points scored this year to the Knights 14. So from that, I couldn't quite get to Knights at the line, even though I am giving them a small chance of an upset. So I expect it to be a closer game. So the way I want to play this one is actually Bulldogs 1-12. Where the Knights are always in the fight and always a chance, but I think Doggies will just get them 1-12, in my opinion, mate. That leads me.
And either 1-12, you got me thinking. That's arguably as good of a bet as Newcastle, because I do expect it'll be ugly and it could be low scoring. And you said that the Dogs are the far better defense. I actually think Newcastle, being an above-average defensive side, can defend not as well as the Bulldogs, but can hang in that game. So I think you raise a good point about a way to play that around the margin or an either team margin to protect yourself from an upset. And you make the great point too about, is it the all-in effort before the bye or is it looking ahead to the bye? But the other point I wanted to make is that Newcastle's heavily reliant on players like Kalen Ponga, Bradman Best. Those guys have carried a lot of workload in the last couple of years for their club and representative. I kind of like backing players like such as those fellas early in a year and fresh off a bye too, because you should get close to an A performance out of those guys, and that can go a long way.
Yeah, certainly. That leads me to Clarkey's Collect Man, which we hold. Well, we don't withhold, but we give it at the end of the show, guys, just to give up something towards the end, and also because I'm not going to move the markets with a negative record, let's be honest. And I was on the Eels game with you, Winnie. And at first I did have plus 2.5 in the first half. I went and changed it to plus 4.5 outright, just because I feel they can actually win. And even if they don't get the first half entirely right, I still feel like they can correct that and get the job done in the second half with some tweakings there. Look, I feel they're due. I think they're a more dynamic team with Riley Smith starting at hooker. And I like that Dylan Walker's now on the bench as well, supporting where I thought they were their strongest guys, just to reiterate, in the middle forwards there, whereas the Dragons do lose a player there in Emre Gula. It was around this time last year where the Titans were also 0-4, and everyone said this team sucks. And they started to turn up, and they had that close competitive game with the Raiders. So I think the Eels are due, guys. My Clarkey's Collect this week is just simply Eels plus 4.5 at $1.90. You'll find that line at most places. So that is Clarkey's Collect Winnie. And don't forget, guys, within 15 minutes of full time, we'll be back to recap and break it all down for you guys front up, talk about all of our best bets and hopefully a lot of winning ones at that. So we'll see you then, and I'll hand it over to you, Winnie, to say farewell.
I'm glad you're on the same side as me for your best bet. Don't detract from yourself, mate. Minus 2.5 units is nothing, especially after being plus 16 last year. From what I detected from your tone, the confidence you had in Melbourne, I thought that was going to cook in. And I'm sure you gave him consideration.
Yeah.
But you've just decided to hone in on one game where less things can
and that's where I've gone wrong with Clarkey's Collect, though, Winnie. I've tried to add in 2 or 3 different games and combine to get a higher price. And if you remember, like I had the Dolphins to beat the Tigers, which I thought was the safer leg, and then Warriors to beat Roosters. So I saw one game perfectly, not the next. So I figured I'm just going to try to get this back to even with single plays. So Eels plus 4.5 for me this round, man.
And what I love about it is you've picked pretty much the ugliest duckling of the whole bunch in Parramatta. Could not have been basically less impressive. Probably the least impressive team of anyone in 2025. But what do they say? What's that old adage, Clarkey? A week, something about 7 days being a significant period of time. Whatever the exact wording is there, you know what I'm alluding to. So let's hope that Para can turn it around, and let's hope that the pod can keep going strong. Thank you, everybody, for your company. Have a great week. As Clarkey said, see you for the recap. Lego.